In today's video, we will continue the discussions related to Orson Scott Card's Shadow Saga, now specifically its second installment, Shadow of the Hegemon, which is a continuation of Ender's Shadow. Published in the year 2000, 1 year after its predecessor, Shadow of the Hegemon tells on its 451 pages the story of Bean and other Battle School graduates after the historic events that transpired in Ender's Game. Shadow of the Hegemon might be expected to align closely with the level of science fiction rigor found in Ender's Game and Ender's Shadow, warranting it a middle-of-the-road rating on the sci-fi Mo scale. However, it is noteworthy to mention that the terrestrial setting on Earth and the diminished emphasis on space along with the technological advancements said space setting entailed contribute to giving Shadow of the Hegemon a somewhat harder sci-fi ambience compared to the two previously mentioned novels. Furthermore, the narrative scope in this installment extends beyond our experiences in these two aforementioned novels of the series. Specifically, it introduces additional settings on Earth and delves deeper into the geopolitical landscape, a facet that was only briefly hinted at earlier in the narrative. Despite this expansion of scope, Shadow of the Hegemon introduces only a few groundbreaking concepts and ideas. The most significant of these is the elevation of Battle School graduates to the status of crucial geopolitical assets, possibly on par with nuclear deterrence. As anticipated, the cast of characters in Shadow of the Hegemon aligns with the scale established in Ender's Shadow, thus resulting in a dramatis personae falling within the upper half of the scale. Shadow of the Hegemon was not able to mimic the critical success of its predecessor Ender's Shadow, and certainly not of Ender's Game. Instead, it was only nominated for the Locus Award in the year 2002. Nonetheless, its popular reception is evidenced by a combined rating of 4.1 out of 5 stars based on tens of thousands of reviews on the usual aggregator sites, thus falling short of the two previously mentioned novels but still retaining a respectable score in this category. As with other books that are part of the Enderverse, you should be aware of potential spoilers during the following plot summary and discussion. In this particular instance, parts of Ender's Game and Ender's Shadow might be in jeopardy of being spoiled. There might also be some spoilers related to Shadow of the Hegemon. Heed this warning and take the necessary precautions. The plot of Shadow of the Hegemon unfolds when the victorious Battle School graduates except Ender return to Earth in the year 2197, after having defeated the Formics. Peter and Valentine, Ender's older siblings, and well-versed anonymous political commentators are torn whether to manipulate events to bring Ender back to Earth, even though the geopolitical fragile situation might spiral out of control as a consequence of Ender's return. The destiny of the other Battle School graduates are a cautionary tale, since various different nations, alliances and factions enter into a global power struggle trying to seize and control these young military geniuses to their advantage. Meanwhile, Bean is thrown into the middle of this escalating conflict and he will have to face some of his biggest fears. The novel endeavors to bridge the gap between Ender's Game and the events of Speaker for the Dead, addressing pressing questions such as the rise of Peter as Hegemon and the unification of Earth's warring nations. However, the geopolitical scenarios presented, while making some sense, veer into the absurd eventually. The portrayal of the main antagonist, Exile, manipulating entire nations to serve his whims and betray them repeatedly, stretches believability, portraying the upper echelons of nation-states as remarkably naive and dumb. I am not above criticizing or even bashing politicians, but even I would acknowledge that the events as portrayed in Shadow of the Hegemon are simply unrealistic and strain, ultimately, the suspension of disbelief. This is especially annoying since the narrative at the same time dispels the notion of the naive, dumb adults with the example of Theresa and John Paul Wien, the parents of Peter, Valentine and Ender. Despite initially being portrayed as gullible, foolish followers of Peter's and Valentine's political commentaries, Shadow of the Hegemon now adds an interesting new dimension that unveils the adult Wiggins as at least an intellectual match to their children, who were just concealing their true talents from everyone, including the readers. Don't get me wrong, Exile worked as an antagonist in the previous book Ender's Shadow, since he was a personal nemesis for Bean on the streets of Rotterdam and eventually later in Battle School. However, such an approach just fails within the scope of a geopolitical struggle between entire nations, alliances and factions, especially if Exile is placed in a position of power as he is in Shadow of the Hegemon. Another prominent plot point is Bean trying to settle in his civilian life and struggling with his troubled past. Certainly this subplot is less action-packed, but in my view it is the stronger narrative thread of the novel, and it has led me to the most pondering of thought-provoking questions in the entire novel. Overall, Shadow of the Hegemon is the stopgap to bridge the events on Earth between Ender's game and Speaker for the Dead. The geopolitical chaos described fleshes out the wider Enderverse, and we are able to further experience adventures with some of the most interesting characters of the entire series. However, the novel has noticeably fewer original concepts and ideas to offer, while also trying to establish a personal fearsome antagonist, but failing at it. Thus, the novel is certainly something for fans of the series. But if you only had lukewarm feelings in relation to other novels of the series, then Shadow of the Hegemon might not be the best investment of your time. If you liked this video, you may also enjoy the other reviews and content on my channel. Feel free to leave a comment if you want to discuss the novels or if you want to suggest other books that I should review in the future. Please consider upvoting and subscribing, it is much appreciated. Thank you for watching and until next time.